All right. Happy Wealth Wednesday, Facebook and Instagram family. Um, we are live this evening on this day after the much anticipated election. If you are like me, you've been somewhat glued to the TV, looking to see how things are going to pan out for these states where we're still waiting for the numbers to come in. But tonight we are going to direct our attention to what I believe is something that's extremely important for us to really consider and think about what our role is as change agents, because no matter who wins the election, this issue will still be in front of us. So for those of you joining, my name is Janelle Rock. I am the founder of Generation Wealth, and we're an organization that focuses on working with both youth and adults and helping them to understand and implement principles around financial independence, so that they're able to achieve that goal sooner in life. When we talk about financial independence, it's really just being able to gain enough passive income to meet and eventually exceed your monthly expenses. So I am super excited this evening because we have a very special guest joining us, and I'm super honored that he has taken the time out this evening to come and to speak with us. So with no more wait, I want to introduce all of you to Dr. Shango Blake. And he's so accomplished, I don't even know where to start, but I will start with he is currently the CEO and founder of True SK Consultants LLC. And he also has a very rich background in the area of education. 28 years of experience precedes him. He spent 11 of those years as a school administrator. And so Dr. Blake is coming to us with a wealth of information and wisdom. And so I really want every parent, every educator who is listening on this evening to eliminate the distractions and really lean in and glean from this very wise individual. So I wanted to start today's conversation by first, posing the question that we're going to be discussing this evening, which is, how do we address the financial literacy crisis in education as educators and caretakers? And before we even jump into some of the questions we're going to discuss this evening, I did want to just kind of set us up to get an idea of what are some of the challenges facing Americans right now when it comes to finances. So some statistics that I thought is important for us to consider. Number one, 45% of Americans have $0 and 0 cents saved. That's almost half of American adults have no money saved in their bank accounts. 42% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I can't imagine what the impact of this current pandemic has had on those families who were already struggling to make ends meet. Then we have 55% of Americans spend more money than they earn. So what does that mean? That means that we have more than half of the Americans in this country are living off of money that they're not making. So they're borrowing money in order to make ends meet. And this is really interesting if we think about the way the economy is set up. And so the American economy thrives when people are borrowing money. We are not an economy that is based on the gold standard as we used to be in the 70s. And so people's ability to borrow and their willingness to borrow more money is what keeps the economy going. So when people stop borrowing money, the economy starts to contract. So actually, when people start saving more money, it's actually kind of a red flag for the country because they're not borrowing enough money, which is really backwards. And maybe we'll get to discuss that a little bit more later. But one of the things that I find really interesting is that if we have adults that aren't saving money, that's living paycheck to paycheck, and they're spending more money than they earn, what example are they setting for our children? Right? So we know that children are great imitators and we should give them something awesome to imitate. But what we're showing them is that it's not important to save, we're showing them that it's okay to spend more money than they earn. And just this idea of living for the now and not having money left over. Now, we do have situations with families who they're just struggling to make ends meet, right? And hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about that. But so just thinking about these statistics, I wanted to pose the first question to you, Dr. Blake. So considering the current state of public education during this pandemic that we're currently going through, should economic empowerment education be a priority? Tell us what you think. Why not?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Janelle, for inviting me onto your program. I'm honored to be on it. Have to say, when you said 28 years of experience and then said wisdom in the same breath, I started to feel extremely old. It was like a punch in the gut. I said, "Oh my God, 28 years!" But I'm thankful to be here, because it could be that I haven't been here for 28 years doing the work that I do. So I am honored to be on your show and to have this discussion with you. You know, when I think about the current state of education and I think about the pandemic, I had two thoughts that came to my mind immediately. And I was just thinking about the stats that you just ran down in terms of the percentage of Americans who save, the percentage of Americans living check to check. And the thought that I had in my mind is that if that's happening with the general American public, then what is happening with Black and Brown America? And so there's a saying that when America sneezes, Black communities have the flu.
Mm.
Right? And I find it interesting that we haven't taught financial literacy and economic empowerment in the classrooms, in the schools across this country, specifically in Black schools. I think back to the history of who we are as a people, what our soldiering has been here in America. Remember, we were brought here as slaves to economically empower this country. So our slavery was built on the economic empowerment was built upon us being slaves. So we were never supposed to be taught the science of economics. And in order for others to thrive economically, we must, I think, remain perpetually in a state of illiteracy when it comes to economics, right? Because once we begin to grow our communities and understand the importance of business, and we understand that business is when you're involved in business, that's a reflection of life is present. Well, in our communities, most of the people that have businesses on our strips don't look like us. So we're not even engaged in the activity of life because we're not engaged in the economic development of our own communities. So I believe, to answer your question, it's a priority now more than ever to teach economic empowerment. I love the fact that you use that term. You know, I disclose we've had these conversations in the past, and I know you like to broaden it out from just the narrow focus of financial literacy. We have been placed in, and why is it important that we teach economic empowerment? I think back to my upbringing, where I was taught to in order as a way to liberate ourselves as a people, that education is liberation, and there was truth to that. But the kind of education we were receiving was only conditioning us to go to college, get a city job, right? Get a pension and retire, right? There was no conversation about building generational wealth in the home, in the family. And I think there was a mistake in that. And now our children coming up, they don't have the opportunities to work for a company for 20 years. Those days are over, right? So they have to have the mindset of entrepreneurs. They have to understand how money works. They have to understand about investment. And so, yes, there's an urgency centered around teaching economic empowerment in our schools. And so the only way we can change, we think about what the schools represent. We grow up in, many of us, poor neighborhoods. Those poor neighborhoods have low performing schools that give our children substandard education that puts them right back in that poor neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes a vicious cycle. And the way in which to reverse that trend, I believe, is to teach economic empowerment to students so that they can begin to create wealth for themselves and for the generations that are coming behind them.
Wow, you dropped so many nuggets just now. I was just like writing like, oh my gosh, the just talking about how the economic empowerment of our oppressors were contingent on us remaining slaves. And so that institution of slavery has just changed over the years, right? So, no, we're not picking
By another name.
yeah, we're not picking cotton in fields anymore. But if we're connecting it now to education and the fact that in schools we know that personal finance is still not taught and is not mandated in over half of the states in the union. And one of the things you said is in order for others to thrive economically, Black and brown children people, not just children, has to remain financially illiterate.
But
Right?
but also listening to those numbers that you said, when you said 45%, I think, of people are living paycheck to paycheck, or
42 check to
42,
paycheck,
and
45%
45,
no money saved.
no money saved. That lets me understand that, that even stretches my thinking to understand that in order for major corporations to exist, that the masses of the American people have to remain financially illiterate. And so it's a system based on ignorance. And so all small businesses in what we would call Main Street are being denied the opportunity to take part in what is called this American dream or experiment, right? But it's just that, again, when they sneeze, we have a flu. So they may be a little bit ahead of us in terms of some of the things that they do. But if they're living paycheck to paycheck, that says that there's something deeply wrong in this country in terms of how the economic ecosystem is playing out.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said. Just, the dependence on, large part of the population remaining ignorant and illiterate. And that goes back to the way that if you look at the way the system is set up and how the economy thrives on debt, right? And not all debt is bad debt, but for those who are ignorant and illiterate, the 99.9% chance that they're going to use that debt in a bad way and then continue that cycle of poverty. And one of the things I've noticed as an educator myself, I haven't been in the game half as long as you have been, but I know that teachers, specifically educators, there's a anxiety that comes with teaching about teaching financial literacy in the classroom, right? And so when we take that financial literacy and then we change it into economic empowerment, right? You feel empowered when you're able to take a set of skills and apply it effectively and then show the results and show somebody else how to do it. Right. But if we have more than half of Americans who are spending more than they earn, almost half who have no savings and living paycheck to paycheck, it's very likely that the teacher is standing in front of the students. There's a 1 in 2 chance that they're struggling with within one of those statistics. Yes. And so there's insecurity that comes with teaching these things because they themselves are struggling. Right? Yes. They themselves don't know how to get out of the hole. And so how do you stand before a group of students who have questions, logical questions, and you can't answer them, or you feel like you are not qualified to teach it because you yourself are struggling with that? And so, it brings me now to the question of school leadership. And so how do school leaders start to build staff capacity in addressing this issue?
Well, just to your point, you can't teach what you don't know.
Mhm.
Right? So that's where the anxiety lies. And I think that it's very simple. There has to be professional development and support. And I remember there was a, there's been a, that not there was, there has been a long trend of trying to improve uh, American children's literacy rates and improve our standing in math and science in the world. And that's how STEAM came to be. And one of the things I remember as a principal was that we had to teach math teachers or teachers who really weren't mathematicians how to teach math. And so I remember there was a trend at one point, and I think it would be applicable now, where they would bring in literacy for literacy and math coaches that
Mhm.
would work with teachers in schools to get them the support around a new curriculum based on literacy and math. I think in literacy at the time, it was the Readers Writers Workshop, the workshop model, and it was a specific math curriculum. So I think that what principals have to do is that they have to invest in the professional development and support of their staff. One of the things that they can do in a very practical way, because I don't want to just make it broad
Mhm.
and I want to get kind of granular with it, is that they could invest in particular teachers, right? Build model classrooms, just
Mhm.
like you did with the literacy program, where in this model classroom, it's all centered around teaching economic empowerment to students, but also giving the teachers the support and resources around that. Having a math coach, I mean, I'm a math coach, this would be an empowerment coach, push into the classroom and walk hand in hand and guide the teacher through the practice, help them with their own anxieties and their fear. I think there will have to be a lot of support. And then once you build the model classroom and you have the coach and the resources, then you try to scale that up. Have those teachers who have went through that process now begin to turnkey with other teachers because we understand the power of peer-to-peer conversations. And that's how you get past the anxiety. Sometimes, teachers don't want to talk to the administrator because they think that they're going to be, that they're constantly being evaluated. But they may feel safe to talk to the coach and then turnkey with their colleagues. And of course, create common planning time. And in the common planning time, where teachers can get together on grade levels to have discussions about everything else that they have, there should be a time set aside for this economic empowerment conversation. So I think identifying teachers who are willing to take the risk, developing strong models, peer-to-peer connection, bringing in people who are skilled like yourself to come in and teach economic empowerment, and then taking those models and bringing it to scale once they're successful.
Yeah, those are such very concrete examples of how this process can actually work. And I think, to preface all of that, in order for that to happen, it has to be on the list of values for the school,
for
right?
the Department of Education,
Yeah,
school, and for the Department of Education. I
absolutely.
think that it has to be prioritized, and it has to be something that we say that this is important. And all the data that you just showed, shared, uh, reinforces that this is a need. And I would be interested in looking at those numbers comparatively to the numbers as it relates to Black and Brown children and Black
Mm,
and Brown communities, right?
yeah,
Because that's I keep on bringing that up because that's where I live and that's where I am most concerned about. So I think you would absolutely even see the gap even greater, and so there's a need. There's definitely a need for these kind of programs. So the entire school system or systems have to see this as a value.
absolutely, absolutely. And generational wealth, we've done work with schools. We've done work with middle school students, high school students, and it's really amazing to see the transformation with the students, but even the teacher. The
Mm.
teacher who's teaching the content, they're like, oh my gosh, like I learned so much as an adult, and I've now changed, some of the decisions that I was making about my money based on what I've been teaching.
I
Um,
said, and I don't think you would get a lot of pushback. from teachers, because sometimes teachers resist reform and change, and it's one more thing to do, but there's so much to learn in this process. I believe that a lot of teachers would be excited about being the model teacher because of the information that they're going to be able to use for their own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, when in my work with teachers and them, sharing the experiences that they've had with students. I guess maybe the only pushback is, initially like, oh my gosh, there's one more thing to do. And if there's space in the schedule for it to be a separate class, then we can do that. But there are so many ways in to integrate these skills into the existing content so that it doesn't seem like it's one extra thing to do. But it, like you said, it has to be a priority. And I really, of course, I'm a bit biased because I eat, I sleep, I breathe economic empowerment all the time. So I'm like, yes, we need this. But there's an urgency, and I think since this pandemic has begun, and we've seen the havoc that is reached in our communities, to me it's now more urgent, more so than ever before, because we're seeing it in ways that we didn't see it before.
Exactly. I mean, I think even the whole uptick in gun violence in our community is really rooted in things like poverty, food scarcity, real economic issues, and people are feeling trapped with their backs against the wall, almost fighting for meager resources. So I think anything that can economically empower the most disadvantaged communities can actually have impact in terms of some of the social realities that are happening in those communities.
Absolutely. So I introduced you as a seasoned educator and the founder of your consulting company, True SK Consultants. But you are also more famously known as the nation's hip hop principal. And you had, in your tenure as a principal, you actually use hip hop as a way to engage students, to get them excited about learning, excited about reading. And I think that's such an important piece when it comes to in education, just in general, especially in these days where we are becoming more aware of the need for culturally relevant curricula, that a student that is engaged in authentic learning, where they're learning, and they may even be involved in an assessment, but they don't even know that they're being assessed because they're so fully engaged. The learning takes on a whole new meaning for them, and it is they carry it on a much deeper level. And that's one of the things I admire about what you are able to do so effortlessly. So for those of you watching, I have seen Dr. Blake switch from professional educator, principal mode, and then all of a sudden he'll just start freestyling. I'm just like, oh my gosh, just the talent, and it's super exciting to watch. But I can just imagine what it must have been like to be a student in your school, and to see that they have a leader who speaks their language and who can understand things on their level, right? And so I say all that to say that if we're thinking about this idea of economic empowerment, let's start to talk a bit about strategies. So now, we're talking to educators, and I also want to bring in parents into this part of the discussion as well, because since the pandemic started, you actually started a virtual platform where you're connecting parents with what's going on in education so that they're not completely disconnected. You were also, part of a march that took place in front of 52 chambers, where parents were, out there are just expressing their frustration over the way this process of kind of getting their kids back into the swing of things when it comes to school, and the communication being quite confusing, and parents not really being a big part of that conversation. So you've also been an advocate for parents. You've you've been able to connect with your students in a way that's authentic and engaging. And so when it comes to, we're still looking at economic empowerment, what strategies could you say educators, and I also want to bring in caretakers. So when I say caretakers, it's not always the parents that are looking after kids at home. Sometimes we have grandparents, right? So we say caretakers. What strategies can they use to make learning about economic empowerment more authentic and engaging?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the whole hip hop piece, right? Because I think that the best way to approach it, one, is to connect with the students' culture, their experience, and their environment. We have to bring those elements into the process of teaching and learning, regardless of what we're teaching. Now, I want to use a specific example of the hip hop project that we did at the school that I was principal. I want to talk about the economic aspect, right? So in this hip hop project, the students made a video, right? They made a song, and then they made a video, and there was all other kinds of instructional things happening. But I'm gonna table that for another time and really double down on the economic empowerment piece. So when we did the video, we negotiated a production company to come in and serve as the people who would produce the video, but we wanted them to work with the students. And so for every position that was in that production company, there had to be a student representative aligned with that position. So if there was a director, there was a student director. If there was a person who was in charge of sound and editing and filming and the grip and the boom, there was a student assigned to each one of those things. But they had artist residents that came in and worked with our school for about 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. The project, in order for us to bring the production company in, I had to negotiate what the cost was going to be. When I was negotiating the cost, I had students with me negotiating the cost. The students had to figure out, okay, we're making this, it was a CD at the time. We're making a CD. How are we going to produce a quality CD within a specific budget without going over cost? What are we going to sell? What's the price point going to be for the CD? That's going to be one, fair, two, turn a profit, and it's going to make sure that we're able to distribute it to the school community in volume. So these students are incorporating everything, like you said, integrating. They're incorporating business and math all in the same breath. So that was an economic empowerment activity, because through the process of doing something that they love, hip hop, they learned, one, how to create a video, and two, they learned how to market the video. They learned how to budget out the cost. So now you're going back into math, and it's not separate and apart. It is integrated in, and it's being applied. Because in order to answer those questions, you have to deal with everything from graphs to charts and the likes, right? So now when you look at, let's say, just taking economic empowerment, like an economic empowerment program, if that is project-based and it's connected to solving a problem or providing a service to the very community that you come from, now not only are you teaching economic empowerment, but you're also teaching social responsibility to your own community. So let's break it down by the core subject areas and what that would look like if it was project-based and interdisciplinary. So we want to bring in all subject areas, which means teachers will go back to my other point in terms of professional development. Teachers would have to work in clusters to co-plan the curriculum out, so they would have the support of each other in the process. But let's look at what each teacher could take in terms of this project-based piece around economic empowerment. If it was English, the English teacher could teach students how to write a prospectus or a business plan, or one-page pitch, or where does grant writing come into it? And why? And then now in teaching each one of these things, you have to teach why those things are important and why you need to know those skills. Math, students could be doing coding, but let's not just stop with coding because that's a popular term. Let's make it more specific to our needs. They could figure out how to create culturally relevant algorithms.
Mm.
because the algorithms that are created now are not created by us for us. So whatever bias is in the mind of the creator of the algorithm is in the algorithm,
Yeah.
right? They could look at what is big data. How do we, what does that term mean?
Mm.
How do you analyze data to develop a better marketing strategy, right? So now you're getting into looking at economic empowerment and breaking it down. That's ELA, English, that's math. Let's look at science. How's technology changing the way we do business? Now we can go right into their world. What is their world? Social media. Well, and then they can do a comparative, a comparison or a comparative analysis, like maybe a Venn diagram of how business was done before social media to now and how that connects. And then lastly, history. We can look at the great contributions that our people have done in the way of economic development so that they know that it's doable. We can look at examples like Black Wall Street, Rosewood, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
All of these different things could be put into project-based kinds of activities that could really make the learning of economic empowerment engaging and at the same time practical, and in a way in which they'll get it because they're applying it to their real life situations.
I love what you said about, the students being able to engage in a learning experience that solves a real problem in their community. Because now the audience extends beyond the classroom.
And now you're tapping into the parents. The parents could be brought into it. It could become a family kind of a approach. And if they're parents right now during this pandemic, there's nothing from you stopping you from creating these kind of activities right now, where you could give your child different assignments that teach both economics and providing a service to the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the audience can even extend to local politicians. So we're trying to, we're looking to solve a specific issue within our community. How do we get the local politicians involved to expedite that particular proposal with parents? One of the things I would encourage caretakers to do is start to be a little bit more transparent about what's happening in the home around finances. So you don't need to share all of the business, right? But starting to share some of what's going on and inviting your children to be part of that conversation. You'll be surprised to hear some of the advice that they may offer, which could possibly be very good advice, but also giving them opportunity to learn about what are the decisions that need to be made on a daily, monthly, weekly basis in order to keep the family economy going. So this has been, oh my goodness, like if you all didn't tune in to the live, like make sure that you catch it on the replay, because there are some really good nuggets that has been shared by Dr. Blake. And I was literally like taking notes while you were speaking.
I'm impressed with that because you are Miss Generation Wealth. So I take so many notes and take in a lot of what you have to offer in terms of the expertise that you bring to the table.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Blake. One thing that's important is that no matter how much we know, that we never, ever stop learning.
Yes.
And so there's always something to learn, no matter how much you know. For those of you who are watching, if you are an educator, I want to encourage you to visit generationwealth.org if you're interested in bringing us in to come in to work with your teachers around integrating financial independence principles into the existing curriculum, or working directly with your students in any of these skills. We are available to do that kind of work. We work with the New York City Department of Education. Of course, if you're an individual and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get my money right, we can help you with that too. You can go ahead and schedule a 30-minute consult where we can talk about a plan to move forward in the area in which you need some accountability and advice. We actually have a free class coming up tomorrow for those of you who are looking at the stock market and you know that you should be doing more and you want to put some money in, but you have no idea where to start. We want to encourage you to go today to generationwealth.org/events to sign up for our upcoming class, which is going to be tomorrow evening at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make money investing in the stock market. This class is absolutely free. It's the last time that we're going to be offering it probably this year. So if you haven't registered for it, we want to encourage you to do so tonight. And I also would like Dr. Blake, I mean, I am sure that those who watched and those who are going to watch after, they're going to want to know, how do they get more of you? So how can we tune in to, because I know that you do a lot of you're very active on social media, so where do we go to follow you? What are some upcoming projects you're working on that we can get connected, so we can just continue to hear from you and follow you on this journey?
Thank you. You can all follow me on my you can go to my IG, which is the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy. All right, that's a whole nother story. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel, where it's a show, the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy. We're in the process of we had our premiere about 3 weeks ago. We're in the process of doing episode 2. We provide educational content where we really just empower our community with information and knowledge about what's happening in our schools and how we can implement different strategies, and we bring on different guests. We try to make it fun. We have a DJ, we have a little hip hop, we have a little laughter, but we really bring on some heavy hitting guests who really provide knowledge, information, and inspiration. So that's the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy. Please go over there. Don't forget to subscribe. That's important, because that's how we're going to help spread the gospel about what it is that we're doing.
Fantastic. I also want to encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to go ahead and follow Black Influencers United. We're an organization that is committed to affecting change in terms of policy advocacy, capacity building, and culture in education for our Black students and Black educators. So we serve Black educators. We impact Black children. We influence others and impact Black children.
You passed the test.
Yes.
I was sitting there listening.
Yes, serve Black educators, influence others, and impact Black children. That is our vision. And we do that through the avenues of policy advocacy, capacity building, and culture and climate. We're an organization that is grassroots. And so, we're looking for influencers. So that means you do not have to be an educator. If you are committed to affecting change in the lives of young people, and you are in entertainment, or you are in law, or you're in finance, but you have a heart for young people and helping to create an environment where their education is truly accessible and equitable, then this is definitely the organization for you. You can follow us on Instagram at @influencer_influenceru. So you have lots of ways to get connected with us. I want to thank you again, Dr. Blake, for joining us this evening. And thank you to everyone who joined us as well. So have a great night, and I'll see you same time, same place next week.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye.